A lot of the growth that I'm going to show you soon in the United States has come from California, because policy matters. It's what's driving a lot of the business here, but you can see it right now. World share is about 2.2% of new vehicle sales. That doesn't mean there's 2.2% of the entire fleet. It just means that new sales, there's about 2.2% of vehicles, of all new vehicles sold are electric. That's actually very, very small. In terms of how rapidly you transition, it's going to be a very long transition because vehicles take 7 to 14 years to really rotate. And here I just thought it'd be interesting because we're in California, so you can see the difference between California uptake versus the rest of the US. So the US, sort of an average going up to 1-2%. Here in California, all of a sudden, you jump to 7.8% in 2018. So it's really starting to be the first state that is sort of going into mass market. And so definitely going to be the first state that experiences this type of mass market deployment. And so if we turn into really the policy, if you look at all of automaker announcements of where they think their sales are going to be on electric vehicles by 2025, they're actually beating all of the regulations that are out there already, the minimum amount, and not even all the adopted, but strongest proposals out there. So some haven't even been adopted. So charging infrastructure, it's a crowded slide because it's a crowded space. And to me, it's a little bit like the Wild West. All of these infrastructure companies are trying different models. None of them is making revenue yet. A lot of them are sort of making a profit yet. Right? They're making revenue, they're not making a profit. And so, but they all have different ways that they think this charging infrastructure is going to be supported. Because really, you can't pay right now for the infrastructure up front and make money on the sale of it, right? And a lot of it has to do with electric grid sort of systems that I won't go into right now. But looking at the different charging infrastructure, retail and work charging, these are companies that are focusing on the host. So you focus on someone that will be able to purchase the infrastructure, and they think of themselves as network operators, right? They don't own the charging infrastructure. Somebody else has to own it, either the workplace or Walmart or someone else owns the infrastructure, and then they operate it at a profit. That's how ChargePoint thinks of themselves, and EVgo has done a number of sort of reinventioning. Then there's obviously the folks who just provide charging for your home, and that's a very simple, Bosch, Siemens, Schneider is getting into it. So just traditionally, people that have traditionally built certain infrastructure, it's a simple model. And then, if I haven't run out of time, I got a couple more slides. So then we really start to think about these advanced technology solutions in charging infrastructure. Right now, we're just really plugging in, and we're not really thinking about how could that EV become more integrated and really solve the utility issues. And so, for example, Greenlots offers this Sky system where you have grid services. They have grid services, site services, distributed energy resources. And you start to think about a fleet of EVs as a way to manage your grid, and that becomes really interesting. But it also makes you wonder, what do you have to assume about usage? Where are people going to plug in? When are they going to plug in? How are they going to plug in to make this a viable option? And so there's some people that are testing revenue models to pay people for accepting energy or releasing energy at key times. And how much will that work, or how important that is yet to be seen. And then really the vehicle-to-grid technology is sort of the holy grail of making sure this infrastructure, that EVs work with the infrastructure. If you're like me and I have a Leaf, I go home, I plug it in at 6 at night in a 110 outlet, and it's slow trickle charging all night. That really does nothing. It actually doesn't help at all the evening peak, right? And I don't need to start charging at 6, but I don't have a timer on it, or I haven't figured out how to use it, perhaps. So I'm really just adding to the evening peak, and that's where you can think about transformers blowing out. If there's 4 or 5 EVs plugged in the same block, right? It's a very localized problem for utilities. But if you can think about it being smart, and I actually have charged it wherever I park during the day, and my battery has been filled up, and then I go home and I plug it in, and that electricity can then actually support the system, you can shave off the peak. And so that's the holy grail of how can we start thinking of EVs not being a load, but just being better for the system. And right now there are 2 pilots that I know of. I think there are a few other pilots here in California as well. But there's Nissan has a couple of vehicle-to-grid tests going on in their operations facility here in the United States, in Chile. And we also have Mitsubishi and Hitachi. Right now, Nissan is the only one that has the vehicle-to-grid technology in the vehicle. And here they're trying to do it as to, well, if you had a bi-directional charger, what is the repercussions in sort of that Mitsubishi vehicle? And so there's a lot of things to still be figured out in this kind of technology, but it offers so many interesting solutions in building energy management systems for microgrids. If we can really figure out a way for EVs to share the load and to become storage systems, then it's a whole different ballgame.
So when you look at California and you look at those market barriers, you've got several of them. You've got the range anxiety. You've got a lot of people on the road in California. Where's the next place that I'm going to be able to charge to get to where I need to go? 2 is, when you look at infrastructure, the cost of infrastructure and the barriers to that of what we're seeing in the marketplace, whether that's home charging, commercial charging, etc. You're seeing a lot of that. And another barrier that we're seeing is you look at rates. So you look at what is it going to cost me per kilowatt hour. From a rates perspective, where are we going in California to help subsidize some of that?
So what are we doing? We're trying to accelerate electrification across multiple sectors. And when you look at the various sectors that are out there, it really starts with, what are we doing in the medium and heavy duty space? That's really where we're going. We've got $356 million to spend there in infrastructure from a utility perspective. So we're going to help customers kind of transform that in that space. And then you start to look at public and workplace and strategizing there. And as I said, we went from basically 1,000 ports to pilot this effort to 32,000 ports to be implemented. So it's really where are we going here and what do we want to do? And then it's transitioning school buses, electric shuttles. I mean, we've partnered with UC System and we're putting in electric shuttles at the various campuses. And then what do we do from an infrastructure perspective to help support that effort? And so there's a pilot that's going on right now with school buses and transit that we're supporting those efforts that the governor came out with to say, you can pilot this with parks, you can pilot this with schools. We can look at those and where we can go in the transit space.